Okay, let's get started with the news this week. There's a lot of things that are going on. The kind of sword fighting about the January 6th commission that the Democrats already negotiated with Republicans on, and now Republicans that are like, let's negotiate on this. I say they should just be like, fuck it, we're going to do it our way that we can already do it. We're in charge of Congress.
Fuck it. Do it. You can do it, so do it.
I feel like Democrats really need to lean in to any disciplinarian matronliness that they have and be like, you can't play with it, I'm taking it away. Now we're playing by my rules.
Couldn't agree more. They have to realize this shit's not on the level. Stop playing like it's on the level. Like the Republicans are going to like negotiate in good faith. It's not on the fucking level.
Yeah, it's tiresome is what it is. It's just fucking tiresome.
Filling my days with legislative ennui.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Like, do a thing. I think every American wants to know what happened January 6th. But I think most Americans who don't work in anything that intersects with politics have other things they're worried about. And those other things cannot be eclipsed by this dumb sword fight. Like, we will, one way or another, do this investigation with the Republicans' help, without the Republicans' help. We're going to do it. I think it's just sucking so much oxygen out of the room. I want them to do infrastructure. Fucking do infrastructure. People need that. Okay, speaking of infrastructure, schools and how they have failed current Republican elected officials. Okay. So I don't like to joke about failing schools because I have so many teachers in my family. Everyone knows that we fucking love teachers on this show.
They do. And this may be more about failing individuals than failing schools.
100% failing individuals. Willfully failing individuals. We're just going to read through a few people who didn't quite seem to take the right lessons from what they were supposed to be learning. So Rand Paul, who is a doctor for eyes, he's not an epidemiologist. He is an eyeball doctor. He is an eyeglasses man. He is not getting the vaccine because he says he has natural immunity because he has COVID, which it hasn't been established that having COVID gives a person natural immunity to every strain of COVID. And it has been established that the vaccine can give people an immunity to multiple strains of concern of COVID. So it's a stupid, I didn't go to medical school. I didn't even take science classes in college. And even I know this. Like, if you're one of Rand Paul's patients, I would find a new eye doctor.
There's not one medical expert who agrees with his assessment.
No, not a single one. And here's another thing that I don't understand. I tweeted something to this effect, but there is a growing body of evidence that suggests that men who have COVID-19 are much more likely to experience erectile dysfunction as a result of having COVID-19. So, like, I understand that erectile dysfunction is a serious issue for a lot of people, but I also want to say that if you are a dumbass who went out and put yourself at risk and you find yourself getting COVID, don't brag about that shit, because underneath that, I'm going to be wondering about your dick. And I don't want to. I don't want to think about it, Rand. Just get the fucking vaccine. Okay. But instead of, getting the vaccine or educating himself, he has spent his time this week trying to get a tweet from singer Richard Marx taken down from Twitter. Did you see this, Alyssa?
No.
Oh my God.
No, I missed this.
Okay, so Richard Marx, 80s prom maker extraordinaire.
Slow dance it out. Just slow dance it out.
Yes. Richard Marx tweeted something that expressed admiration for Rand Paul's neighbor. Now, Rand Paul's neighbor famously beat Rand Paul up at one point. Richard Marx said that he would like to buy that neighbor a drink. So, first of all, that's not even an original joke. People joke around about thinking that neighbor was cool all the time.
Since it happened.
All the time. People make a different version of that joke. Richard Marx was probably just the first celebrity that Rand Paul knew to make that joke. And he was like, hey, so that's how he's using his energy this week. Yeah.
Wait, Erin, can you imagine the man who sang the song, wherever you are, whatever you do, I will be right here waiting for you. That he has been driven to say, I want to buy the man who decked Rand Paul in the face a drink. Yes. I think that's hilarious. And yes, that was Cartman singing Richard Marx.
I could read that Cartman impression through. I would watch an entire episode of South Park that just was a musical featuring Cartman, to be honest.
Singing songs about Rand Paul.
Oh, yeah, totally. Look, I don't think that we should encourage people to beat other people up, but Richard Marx's joke wasn't even original, and, like, there are other things to worry about Rand. Like, calm down. Okay. Marjorie Taylor Greene is comparing mandatory vaccines and mask wearing to what Jews went through during the Holocaust, which she apparently thinks was a public health measure, I guess. And she's, doubled, tripled down saying she's not sorry. But she doesn't have any committee assignments. She doesn't really have anything better to do because of other crazy shit she's already done. So I'm not sure this is how she's using her time. Congratulations, Marge. You got attention.
Got attention for being the dumbest bitch in town.
Congratulations, Marge. We now all know that everything that you think is bad, you compare it to the only other thing that you are aware of is bad, which is the Holocaust.
Except we can't even tell how bad she really thinks the Holocaust is.
She said she wouldn't take down statues of Stalin and Hitler. I guess maybe she likes wearing masks and wants to get a vaccine because Hitler is, I don't know. My brain hurts and I can't give her the power to hurt my brain like this. She's not important enough.
No, but also it's like, stop calling it a gold star. It was a yellow star. I mean, it's like, if you're going to be wrong, at least I don't know. I guess it's not even worth getting some part of it right because she's just so wrong.
Yeah. And have you learned any other history? Do you know about anything else that ever happened that you could maybe compare this thing you don't like to?
I'm sure she could give us a whole earful on what she thinks Manifest Destiny was about.
That's true. She probably knows like a upsetting amount about like Civil War battles.
Right. All the wrong one. The three that they didn't lose.
Right, exactly. She's like the person who starts talking about the Civil War if you're like in drinks with a group of friends and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home. I don't want to be around this person. Okay, here is another one that fits into this larger point that I'm making. A Wyoming state senator who plans to mount a primary challenge to Liz Cheney compared himself to Romeo from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet when news broke last week that Anthony Bouchard, that's the name of the candidate, impregnated a 14-year-old girl when he was 18. By the way, this took place in Florida. The age of consent in Florida, both then and now, is 18. So what Bouchard did was statutory rape, not statutory Romeo. Why would you compare yourself to Romeo in this context?
Girl, when he looks in the mirror, he sees Romeo. That is called reverse body dysmorphia.
Also, has he read a book since 10th grade?
Or watched one episode of Law and Order?
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. Like, did he even read to the end of Romeo and Juliet? Because Romeo killed himself.
It's true.
They both did. And it's a tragedy. So it's very sad.
We should send this dumb fuck some hemlock and see if he knows what to do with it.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he'll make a boutonniere. And finally, Talking Thumb Rick Santorum was let go from CNN after he commented to a conservative youth group.
We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there's nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
I gotta hand it to Native American organizers and activists. They did what women and gay people could not do, which was get rid of Rick Santorum. And I consider that to be a very important cultural contribution.
I could not agree more. When I watched this clip first come out, it's like you just wonder. You're like, that just came out of your mouth, and it wasn't like, it didn't trigger anything. He wasn't like, oh shit, I didn't mean that the way it came out. He was just like, He just doubled down with the head nod.
And then he went on Fox News to talk about how he was being silenced. Fox News, the cable TV channel with the largest audience in America. That's not called being silenced. That's called weaponized whining, Rick. That's just... But here's the thing. Like, I think that, when I heard the quote originally, which I think it was from back at the end of April that the quote first surfaced, I thought, did Rick Santorum pay attention to American history after he was past the age when they shelter us from American history? Like when you're in elementary school, right. You don't learn about all the stolen labor, stolen land, rape, murder, genocide. They kind of save that until we're maybe more
10th grade.
Right? Yeah. I think middle schoolers are ready for this. We gotta be honest with our kids. But that was a third grader's understand. It's like he read a third grade picture book and was like, yep, and then the white people came over and there was nothing here.
But not even, because if you had only gotten as far as the third grade picture book, you'd at least think that they brought you Thanksgiving. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Maize.
Maize, right? Like the rudimentary book actually, I think, gives Native Americans more credit than Rick Santorum.
Yeah, I also think that it's kind of funny that he would use the word birthed and then the words from nothing. Like the implication of the word birthed is that something has a mother, like it came from something, like it's just, I don't know. So anyway, all of these 4 stories, Rand Paul, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Wyoming's non-Romeo, and Rick Santorum kind of drove home this idea that I've had for a while, which is that current Republicans do not read. They do not read books after high school. Like, I bet a lot of them are like Andrew Yang style Catcher in the Rye is my favorite book type people.
Oh, I think that's a good call. That's a good call.
It's like the longest thing they've read since 10th grade is a Cheesecake Factory menu.
Like, what have you read that wasn't at one point assigned reading?
Exactly. Or what's your favorite book that's from the last 5 years, that was published in the last 5 years? I think that's a good question.
They would all just be like, my book, because for some reason, most of them get fucking book deals.
Who's buying them? Who's
don't
buying them? Who's reading them? I don't think that they get read.
No, they're just propaganda for the bookshelf for the room raider.
Yeah, I mean, completely, 100%. Ugh, but so many trees. Why do they all have to die? We have to move on, but first I want to toast somebody. I mean, I think that we kind of like imply a toast to her just by living our lives, because she just represents unmitigated excellence.
At every turn, literally.
Yes. Simone Biles, arguably the greatest living American athlete, possibly the greatest gymnast of all time. On Saturday, she became the first woman in history to perform and successfully land the Yurchenko double pike in competition. It is a move that's considered so dangerous that no woman has ever even attempted it. Okay, so the vault is named after a Russian gymnast named Natalia Yurchenko. The reason the vault is named after her is because of the approach, not the actual like flipping.
Right.
Yeah. What did you make of this vault?
I had to have watched it 15 times, 20 times. I couldn't get enough. Also, her costume that she was wearing, her outfit was very, very good. And at first I was watching her tumble, then I'd pay attention to her uniform, then I'd watch her flip again. I mean, the thing I always think about when I watch gymnasts do that is like, how do you get the courage to do the first one? Right? To like, to do the first one where like you don't know how it feels, you don't have the muscle memory for it. But she made my day. I love watching women fly and then land on 2 feet.
Yeah, she's an absolute phenom and just like an American hero. And I got to say, my feelings about the Olympics are mixed, but my feelings about Simone Biles are very simple. And that is, she's awesome. And I support her in everything she does.
I agree with you entirely.
Alyssa, I have a question for you.
Yes, Erin.
Are you one of those people that like writes your period down in your calendar?
Occasionally.
Oh, okay. So it's just completely useless. Like you just don't
It's
track.
kind of useless. I started writing it down because I'm supposed to take Prozac 5 days before it starts. So that's the only thing that's ever gotten me to take pen to paper on this topic.
Interesting. I know people that are really, really religious about it, that like track it every month. I was not one of those people. I was like, I don't know. It happens like the 26th-ish. I don't know. So the reason we're talking about this, in addition to the fact that we do talk about this kind of thing anyway, because this is just how we are, in case it wasn't already in your calendars, listeners, tomorrow, May 28th, is Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is a day that aims to change the negative social norms around menstrual hygiene. So periods are normal. You wouldn't
We
know
all get
it.
them.
You wouldn't know it. What a concept. So we're really excited today to talk to Molly Hayward, who is the founder and chief branding officer of Cora, a women's wellness company that is working to change the feminine hygiene industry and bring an end to period poverty. Molly, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here.
We're really excited to talk about this. So firstly, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about what period poverty is?
Period poverty is essentially a person's inability to access or afford adequate menstrual care. So it could be sort of whatever product or means they want to manage their period, but for whatever reason, they're not able to, again, afford or access, and I would say access sort of using that term mostly geographically, the period care they need. And this is a problem that exists the world over. I first became aware of it in developing countries, but in fact, it's also a major issue here in the US and in many developed countries as well.
But Molly, more specifically, how did you first learn about the issue? I'm leading you because I kind of know the answer. And how did it influence you to create Cora?
Yeah, so I was traveling in Kenya several years ago. I was with a nonprofit organization that was focused on girls' education and women's health. And so I was seeing all of these girls, being the first in their families to go to school, all of this kind of amazing investment being made within the community to make sure that they could attend school. So making sure they had uniforms and books and tuition. And this organization was even helping to build school buildings. And I got to know a lot of the girls. And one day, one of them told me that she stayed home during the week of her period every month because she couldn't access or afford, a period pad. And that just totally floored me. And, it was really this moment where I realized this is this common experience among all menstruating humans around the globe, and yet our experiences of that experience can be so vastly different just depending on our our circumstances and situations. And it felt incredibly unjust to me that her life would be negatively impacted by this just biological fact. And so, that was really the impetus for creating Cora. I knew that there could also be a better way for women in my own society to have healthier products that are more sustainable and have just a more modern brand experience and tie that back to giving to girls in need. So that's what we've done.
So I read that you called the feminine care industry, and I'm using your quote, fucked. What's fucked about the industry, and what aspects of the feminine care industry are you most hoping to change? How can it get unfucked?
I'm really glad this is a podcast where we could say fucked. Yeah, it is frankly fucked. When I got back to the US after that fateful trip, I really started to dig into the industry to understand my own experience of my period. And I started to look at, not just the products themselves, but the ads, the marketing, the way that we talk about this experience among each other. And, the thing that stood out to me first and foremost was that it was really hard to find out what was in these products. So, I was putting a tampon in my body for a week, a month, and, was going to do that for the rest of my life. But it was not clear to me what was in that product. And when I started digging deeper, I learned that, many of those products were made with synthetics or non-organic cotton, which is one of the dirtiest crops in the world. And I was just horrified, not to mention kind of what I would call the antiquated notions of womanhood that a lot of brands were kind of still using as a way to hook girls into their brands. This industry has really run on a kind of hook them while they're young philosophy. And a lot of that's based in fear, touting kind of all the ways that they'll make sure that no one ever knows you have a period, and sort of this erasure of this experience. And so, the thing that, that I want to see changed more than anything in this industry is really the mindset about this experience. I think it's so damaging to have an aspect of your body that you hate or loathe, or that you really just, struggle through, and everybody's body is different, and it can be incredibly painful and difficult for some people, and there's no denying that. And that is really real. But I think it's that perception, that societal sort of stigma that that I would like to see altered by the way that I think newer brands and organizations are starting to actually approach things.
And, when you were just talking, it made me realize that a lot of people who don't menstruate and never have menstruated have a complete lack of understanding of the way the reproductive system works in a person with a uterus. Like,
Totally.
and some of them are making laws. Some of them are making laws about what we're supposed to be doing with those things. So
Totally.
I think that like what you're saying about like removing the stigma could maybe help men be less stupid about the way that like the female reproductive system, how the uterus works, like all of those things, which I think we see evidence of that ignorance in so many ways. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's baby steps here, but we're trying. We're doing what we can.
Now, Molly, I have always suffered with my periods. Several years ago, a friend told me about Cora. I decided to try it, and I was so blown away by how my body felt during my period. I mean, it was literally such an extreme difference from what I had been using to how I felt when I used your products that, full disclosure, I went and invested in your company because I wanted everybody to be able to try your products. So you mentioned tampons, and explain this a little bit more because I'm not the expert you are. Tampons, not regulated by the FDA, correct?
Tampons are regulated by the FDA
are.
because they go inside your body, so they're considered a medical device. Pads are much more loosely regulated because they don't go in your body. But what I would say is that regulation that happens, I'd say it's been pretty lax, in terms of the materials you could use to make that product. Those are not materials historically. The historically used materials are not ones that I would recommend putting in anyone's body.
What is something, aside from that the average person doesn't know about the tampon and feminine hygiene care industry that they absolutely should?
I think it is that ingredients are very loosely regulated. And, I think that the biggest assumption among women menstruators who we talk to, who are kind of like learning about natural or organic options for the first time, is like, well, I had no idea, and I just assumed that someone was regulating these and looking out for me and making sure that the ingredients were, were safe and healthy for me. And, as we know, that's in a lot of industries, that's not true at all. They're just, this is one of those ones where you really have to, I think, read the ingredients, educate yourself, and make your own conscious decisions.
It's funny to hear about just like this totally unregulated, well, not totally unregulated, but this largely unregulated medical device that women and people who menstruate put in their bodies once a month for a very long time. And people are freaking out about the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
Totally.
Guys, let's
Yeah.
freak out about the right things, please. Let's refocus our freaking out. Okay.
Totally.
So the tampons and feminine care industry is obsessed with the idea of discretion and that our periods are something to be ashamed of and hidden. So how do we break the stigma? Let's say that this is just like one average listener who's like, I'm going to do my part to break the stigma. What should that person do?
Well, I think it's to me, it's very much to each their own. I think what we've seen happening over the last few years is like this level of just like pride and openness. I think certainly on social media and kind of out in the real world, but like captured by the media in important ways and then sort of highlighted. Like I'm thinking about Kiran Gandhi running the London Marathon without kind of like free bleeding and like having blood on her pants when she ran over the finish line and like not giving a fuck. One of the earliest, posts that I think like kind of blew up the internet a little bit was Ruby Kaur posting, a picture of like a period stain on her sweatpants and being really like, kind of like, hey, this is very real. Like I bleed every month and, like we all do. And I'm like putting this front and center. And so I think like there's kind of at that level of visibility, there are things happening that I think are really inspiring. I don't think every person has to like walk around with blood on their pants, nor like do most of us want to. But I think it's almost like having a willingness to talk about it, and not just in negative terms. I think like the old way was sort of like, this was this thing that you got to like commiserate with your girlfriends about. And like, it was just this thing. And yet, like, I think what is coming through, especially just with like, I think this broad movement that's happening where there's just more and more acceptance of this experience as very like normal and natural, is like a permission to talk about it in a new way, and a permission to just be really open with it, even with your partners, like, you know, especially male partners, where I think before it was like, I'm going to hide this from my male partner. Like, they're not going to know when I'm bleeding. Like, you know, I might be like a wreck, or I might be a total bitch, but like, I'm not, you know, we're not going to talk about it. And like now, like the big thing is like period sex. We just launched a reusable disc, which is similar to a cup, but you can wear it while you're having sex. And so, you know, I think it's just like opening up more and more doors for conversation, where conversation was not happening before, or the conversation was overall negative.
I think that's the first time in Crooked Media history that a podcast has had a period sex conversation.
Yeah.
On it. I think that we made some history just now. Yeah, I think, you know, another thing that I think about when it comes to like just the, you know, having a uterus that bleeds sometimes, it's kind of fucking metal, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
it's kind of metal. Like it's like pain, and then it's like blood, and then it's like, and then you get crabby and you get aggressive sometimes, or you get tired. It's just, I think it's more metal than people give it credit for. It's not like
it's
this
intense.
It's like, yeah, it's not.
Oh my God, it's hardcore. Like, I have a friend who was like, we bleed and don't die. Like, where else in like, that's like mythological.
We bleed a shocking amount from a organ that, when during non-pregnancy, is the size of a lime.
Totally.
Uterus.
Totally.
What are you doing?
Who are you? I don't know if you guys had it, or where in the world you are right now, but I'm on the West Coast, and it was the super blood moon last night.
Yeah.
And it was like visible at like where I am at like 4:15 in the morning. So I set an alarm because my husband and I are kind of geeks, and you know, I got up and like, you know, opened the window to look out, and like, I swear to God, like my uterus was like aching, just looking at it. And, you know, I think it's real. And, yeah, it's definitely no joke. Like, you know, having these parts is,
it's an intense mystery, definitely. Molly, thank you so much for joining us and talking about this with us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.